I was a single dad, struggling to pay my rent, my wallet almost empty. Still, when I saw a little boy crying outside a shoe store because his own shoes were falling apart, I used my last grocery money to buy him a new pair. The next day, a man knocked on my apartment door, and what he said to me, with tears in his own eyes, would change my life forever. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's head to that shoe store. The end of the month always had a specific, metallic taste in the back of my throat. The taste of fear. It was the taste of the bright red final notice envelope from the electric company sitting on my small kitchen table, and the knowledge that I was still $200 short on rent. For the past year, since my wife had passed, my life as a single father had been a constant, grinding, and deeply lonely battle against a rising tide of bills. I worked 2 jobs, a warehouse loader by day, a janitor by night, and still, it was never enough. My greatest and most constant fear was not for myself, but for my son, Ben. He was a good, sweet, and resilient 8-year-old boy, and he deserved a world I felt I could no longer provide for him. On this particular afternoon, that feeling of failure was a heavy, bitter stone in my gut. I had just come from the hospital where I had paid for Ben's asthma medication, a necessary expense that had wiped out the last of my meager savings. I was walking home with him from the grocery store, a single, sad-looking plastic bag in my hand, containing a box of pasta and a jar of sauce. Our meals for the next 3 days. The $50 bill in my wallet was all I had left to my name until my next paycheck. It was as we were passing the local, family-owned shoe store that we saw him. He was a boy, about Ben's age, sitting on a bench just outside the entrance, his small body shaking with quiet, heartbreaking sobs. But it was his shoes that made my own heart ache. They were not just old, they were destroyed. The soles were completely detached at the toes, flapping open like 2 hungry mouths, and they were held to the body of the shoe with a desperate, failing wrapping of gray duct tape. My son, Ben, a child who, despite our own struggles, had a heart full of a pure and simple empathy, was the one who stopped. "Dad, he's crying," he whispered, tugging on my sleeve. I knew I should have kept walking. My own problems were a mountain, and I had no strength to spare to climb someone else's. But I couldn't. I walked over to the bench and sat down beside the crying boy. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "What's wrong?" "My shoes," he whispered, pointing down at his own ruined feet. "The other kids at school, they called me duct tape shoes. My mom promised we could get new ones today, but..." His voice broke, a fresh wave of tears streaming down his face. "She lost her job last week, and she said we can't afford it." I looked at this boy, at his profound, adult-like shame, and I saw a reflection of my own. The shame of not being able to provide, the shame of being poor. I then looked at my own son, who was watching the boy with an expression of such deep, profound sympathy. And in that moment, a choice was made. I could take my $50, walk home, and we would be fed for the week. Or I could do something else. I could use my last, pathetic bit of money to give this one sad little boy a small moment of dignity. "What's your name, son?" I asked. "Leo," he whispered. "Well, Leo," I said, standing up and offering him my hand, "I think today is your lucky day. My son and I were just about to go shoe shopping. Why don't you come with us?" The look of stunned, disbelieving hope on his face was a thing of beauty. I took him into that store, and I didn't buy him the cheapest pair on the sale rack. I bought him a pair of good, sturdy, well-made leather school shoes, the kind I wished with all my heart I could afford for my own son. They were $47. As the clerk was ringing them up, Leo looked at me, his eyes full of a new, worried question. How will my mom know who bought them, so she can pay you back? You just tell her a secret angel saw that you were having a tough time and wanted to help out, I whispered back with a wink. I watched him run down the street, his new shoes flashing in the afternoon sun. My own son, Ben, looked up at me, and his face was full of a pride and an admiration so profound that for a single fleeting moment, I felt like the richest man in the world. That feeling, of course, vanished the second we got back to our small, cramped apartment and I opened our empty refrigerator. The reality of my choice, of our situation, came crashing back down on me. The $47 I had just spent on a stranger's child was our grocery money for the entire week. I had a can of tomato soup, half a box of pasta, and $3 to my name until my next paycheck, which was still 5 long days away. But my son was happy, his heart full from the good deed we had done together. He had no idea that his own dinner for the rest of the week would be a thin, watery soup. I smiled, I read him his favorite story, and I pretended that everything was okay. The lie a heavy, bitter stone in my gut. This is what it meant to be a father, I thought. To absorb the world's hardships so that your child's world could remain safe and warm. The next day was one of the longest of my life. I sent Ben to school with the last of the bread and a single apple. A lunch so meager, it made me feel a profound, burning sense of shame. I spent the entire day in a frantic, desperate search for extra work. I went to construction sites, to warehouses, to every temp agency in the city. But the story was the same everywhere. No work, no hope, come back next week. I walked home in the late afternoon, my body aching with a weariness that was bone deep, my spirit a hollowed-out ruin of defeat. The red, final notice from the electric company was still on the kitchen table, a silent, mocking testament to my failure. I was at my absolute lowest point, a man drowning in a sea of his own quiet desperation. And then there was a knock on the door. It was not a timid knock. It was a firm, solid, and confident sound. My heart plummeted. It had to be the landlord, Mr. Henderson, a man whose patience had been wearing thin for months. I braced myself for the humiliation, for the inevitable eviction notice, for the final crushing blow. I took a deep, steadying breath, pasted a neutral, defeated expression on my face, and I opened the door. But the man standing in the hallway was not my landlord. He was a stranger. He was a man about my own age, dressed in the simple, clean work clothes of a handyman or a construction worker. His face was kind, but tired, etched with the lines of his own struggles. And in his hands, he was holding a large, steaming, and absolutely incredible-smelling container of what looked like homemade beef stew. We just stood there for a long, awkward moment, two strangers on opposite sides of a doorway. "I'm sorry," I finally stammered. "I think you have the wrong apartment." The man looked down at a small, crumpled piece of paper in his other hand. "Are you Elias?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my confusion deepening. A slow, emotional, and deeply moving smile spread across his tired face. He looked at me, and his eyes, which were kind and brown, were shining with unshed tears. "Are you the angel man?" he asked, his voice a little shaky. I just stared at him, completely and utterly bewildered. The what?" "My son, Leo," he began, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "He came home yesterday, with new shoes. He told us a story about a kind man, an angel man, who had found him crying and had bought him the shoes he needed for school." He shook his head, a look of profound, wondrous disbelief on his face. "My wife, Maria, and we didn't know what to think, but he described you, and he described your son. We went back to the shoe store this morning. The clerk remembered you. She told us where you lived." He then held out the warm container of food, a humble and yet magnificent offering. "My name is Robert, and my wife, she sent you dinner." I was speechless. I just stared at the container, at this stranger, at this impossible, beautiful, and completely unexpected act of grace. I don't know what to say," I finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he said, his voice now a low, conspiratorial whisper. "We know what it's like. My wife, she just lost her job. I'm only working part-time. We're struggling too." But she looked at me, a look of profound and deeply felt gratitude on his face, that no man who showed that much kindness to our son when we could not should ever have to go hungry. I took the container from him, its warmth spreading through my cold, trembling hands. I thought my act of kindness had been a secret, a single, anonymous ripple in a vast, indifferent ocean. I had no idea it was about to come back to me as a tidal wave of its own. I had no idea that I was not just being given a meal. I was being given an invitation into a new and better kind of family. I stood in the doorway of my apartment, holding the still warm container of beef stew, a savory, life-affirming scent that was a world away from the stale, hopeless air I had been breathing just moments before. The man, Robert, stood in the hallway, his face full of a quiet, humble gratitude. In that moment, we were not a benefactor and a recipient. We were just two fathers, two struggling men, connected by an unlikely and beautiful act of grace. I, I don't know what to say," I finally whispered. "Please, come in. I was just about to make dinner for my son, but—" I gave a small, sad laugh, gesturing to the box of pasta on my counter. "I have a feeling your wife's cooking is a little better than mine." He stepped inside, and we shared that first meal together. Our sons, Ben and Leo, who were shy and uncertain at first, were, by the end of the meal, chattering and laughing like they had been friends their entire lives, their bond forged over a shared love of dinosaurs and a mutual dislike of carrots. Robert and I talked. We spoke of our late wives, of the profound, crushing loneliness of single fatherhood. We spoke of our struggles, of the constant, grinding anxiety of trying to make ends meet in a world that felt like it had no room for error. It was the first, truly honest conversation I had had with another man in over a year. When he left that night, he reiterated his wife's promise. "She meant it, you know," he said, his hand on the doorknob. "She'll be back tomorrow. We don't have much to give, Elias, but we have a kitchen, and we look after our own." And she did. The next evening, at precisely 6 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. It was his wife, Maria, a woman with the same kind, tired eyes as her husband, and she was holding a large, steaming casserole dish of what smelled like heaven. And so began the new, strange, and beautiful rhythm of our lives. Every single evening for the next 3 months, without fail, either Robert or Maria would appear at my door, a warm, delicious, and life-saving meal in their hands. The food they brought was more than just sustenance. It was a daily, tangible reminder that I was not alone. And slowly, our two broken, struggling families began to knit themselves into something new, something whole. It was not a one-way street of charity. It became a beautiful, unspoken barter system of kindness and support. I discovered that Robert, a handyman by trade, was a genius at fixing things. He fixed my leaky faucet, he repaired Ben's broken bicycle, he patched the hole in my wall, all with a quiet, cheerful competence. In return, I found my own ways to contribute. I saw that his son, Leo, a bright but anxious boy, was struggling with his reading. And so, 3 nights a week, our small living room would transform into a little schoolhouse, where I would sit with both our boys, patiently helping them sound out the words in old, worn-out library books. Ben, who had always been a little lonely, now had a best friend, a brother. We were no longer 2 separate, struggling households. We were a team. A single, sprawling, and beautifully messy family.
pooling our meager resources, our different skills, and our shared, fierce love for our children. We were, all of us, finally getting by. The turning point, the moment that our fragile makeshift family was about to become something permanent, came on a Tuesday. I came home from my long shift at the warehouse to find Robert and Maria already in my apartment, setting the table for dinner. But tonight was different. There was a bottle of cheap, celebratory sparkling wine on the table, and their faces were alight with a joy I had not seen before. "She got it!" Robert announced, his voice booming with a proud, happy laugh. "Maria got the job, the one she interviewed for last month. A full-time, salaried position with benefits." A wave of pure, unadulterated happiness washed over me. Their struggle was over. But beneath the happiness was a small, selfish pang of sadness. I knew this meant the end of our arrangement, the end of the daily meals, the end of our strange, beautiful, and necessary codependency. But I was wrong. After we had toasted to Maria's success, Robert turned to me, his expression now serious and full of a new and different kind of purpose. "Our new life is starting, Elias," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "and we want you to be a part of it." Maria chimed in, her own eyes shining. "My new job has great health insurance, Elias, enough to cover both our families. And my own construction business is finally starting to pick up. I have too much work and not enough hands. I need a partner, Elias, not just an employee, a partner. A man I can trust, a man who has a good head on his shoulders and an even better heart." He leaned forward, a look of profound and deeply moving sincerity on his face. "I want you to come and work with me, to build something with me, for both our boys."
I just stared at them, my heart a wild, frantic drum in my chest. A job, a real job, a career, a partnership, a future. It was everything I had been so desperately and so hopelessly praying for. But as I looked at their kind, hopeful faces, a new, cold, and terrifying thought, a thought born of years of feeling like a failure, crept into my mind. I was a warehouse worker, a janitor. I knew how to lift heavy boxes and scrub floors. I didn't know how to build a business. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I accepted their incredible, life-altering offer, and in doing so, I failed the only true and real friends I had ever known? "Robert," I began, my own voice a weak, trembling thing, my eyes fixed on the floor. I am honored, more than you could ever know. But I can't. I'm not who you think I am. I don't know the first thing about construction, about running a business. I'm a man who lifts heavy boxes and scrubs floors. I'll just mess it up. I will let you down." There was a silence in the room, and then Robert laughed. It was not a mocking laugh. It was a deep, warm, and wonderfully dismissive sound. "Let you down," he said, his voice full of a genuine, baffled amusement. "Elias, are you listening to yourself? For the past year, you have been working 2 back-breaking, soul-crushing jobs. You have been raising a wonderful, kind, and brilliant son, all by yourself. You have faced every single hard day with a quiet, unshakable dignity. And just a few months ago, when you had absolutely nothing, you used your last few dollars to buy a pair of shoes for a complete stranger's child, out of the pure and simple goodness of your own heart." He leaned forward then, his gaze intense, his voice now a low, serious rumble. "You think this job is about knowing how to swing a hammer? I can teach you how to swing a hammer in a week. I can teach you how to read a blueprint. I can teach you how to run a payroll." He shook his head. "But I cannot teach character, my friend. I cannot teach integrity. I cannot teach a man how to be a decent, honorable human being. You," he said, his voice full of a faith in me that I had never had in myself, "already have all the hard parts figured out. I'm not just offering you a job, Elias. I am betting on you. I am betting on your character." I looked up from the floor. I looked at his kind, honest face. I looked over at our two sons, Ben and Leo, who had stopped their own playing and were watching us, their own faces a picture of silent, hopeful anticipation. My own son, Ben, gave me a small, confident nod, a look of such pure, unwavering belief in his father that it broke something open in my own heart. The fear was still there, but for the first time, it was not the only thing I could feel. Beneath it, a new, fragile, and deeply unfamiliar feeling was beginning to take root. Hope. "Okay," I whispered, the word a quiet, terrifying, and beautiful thing. "Okay, Robert, I'll do it." The weeks that followed were a complete and total reinvention of my life. My first act was the most satisfying thing I have ever done. I walked into the cold, sterile office of my warehouse manager, and I quit. I then went to the school where I worked as a janitor, and I quit that too. I was no longer a man defined by his exhaustion. My first day on the job with Robert was a lesson in humility. I was clumsy. I was inexperienced. I didn't know the difference between a joist and a beam. But I was a hard worker, and Robert was a patient and brilliant teacher. He taught me how to read blueprints, how to frame a wall, how to run a payroll. We worked side by side from sunrise to sunset, two men building something new, not just with wood and nails, but with a foundation of a deep and abiding mutual respect.
And I discovered that I was good at it. My methodical, careful nature, the very thing that had made me a good, if slow, warehouse worker, made me an excellent project manager. The business, with the two of us working as a true team, began to thrive. One evening, a few months later, we were sitting on the tailgate of Robert's old pickup truck, drinking a cold beer after a long, hard, and deeply satisfying day's work. Our two boys were playing catch in the field beside us. We had just finished framing the walls of a beautiful new home for a young family. Robert was looking not at the house, but at a set of rolled-up blueprints in his lap. "I think it's time for our next project," he said, a strange, proud smile on his face. "A personal one." He unrolled the blueprints across the tailgate. They were not for a client. They were for a large, beautiful, and slightly unusual-looking house. A duplex, a two-family home. "It's on a beautiful 3-acre plot of land just on the other side of the school district," Robert said, his voice full of a quiet, happy pride. "I was able to get it for a good price." He pointed to the blueprints. "One side for me and Maria and Leo, and the other side," he looked at me, his eyes shining, "for you and for Ben." He clapped me on the shoulder. "What do you say, partner?" he asked, his voice full of a future I had never thought possible. "Time to build our own home, together." I looked at the blueprints, at the beautiful home we would build with our own hands, a home for our new, strange, and chosen family. I thought of the lonely, struggling single dad who had been counting his last few pennies just a few short months ago. That man was gone. In his place was a partner, a builder, a man with a future, and it was all because of a single, simple, and life-changing pair of shoes. I don't know what to say, Robert," I finally managed to stammer, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "Don't say anything," he said, clapping me firmly on the shoulder, his own eyes shining with a fierce, happy pride. "Just say you'll help me build it. I'm good with my hands, but you're the one with the good business head. You can manage the budget. Make sure I don't spend all our profits on fancy countertops." And so began the next and most beautiful chapter of our lives. We didn't just build a house. We built a home. The months that followed were a blur of hard, joyful, and deeply satisfying work. I was no longer just a partner in Robert's business. I was a partner in his life, and he in mine. We worked together on our clients' projects during the day, and we spent our evenings and our weekends working on our own. Our two sons, Ben and Leo, playing amidst the sawdust and the stacks of lumber, our own little construction crew. Maria, Robert's wife, would bring us our meals, her own face now free from the constant, gnawing worry that had once lined it. She and I formed our own quiet, powerful bond, a friendship built on a shared history of struggle and a profound mutual love for our children. As the house took shape, so did our new family. We were a strange, beautiful, and patchwork creation, a family forged not by blood, but by a single, simple, and life-changing act of kindness.
It's been a year now. We live in the duplex. Our two homes are connected by a large, shared backyard, the fence between them long since taken down. The sound of our two boys, our sons, our brothers, laughing as they chase each other through the grass is the constant, happy soundtrack of my new life. Our two families are now one, a sprawling, chaotic, and deeply loving unit. I am no longer a warehouse worker. I am a business owner, a partner, a builder, a father who can provide a safe and beautiful home for his son. Last night we were all having a barbecue in our shared backyard to celebrate the one-year anniversary of our construction company. As I stood by the grill, a cold beer in my hand, watching my son, Ben, and his best friend Leo trying to teach Robert how to play a new video game, I thought about the man I had been a year ago. The lonely, struggling, and desperate single dad who had been counting his last few pennies, terrified of the future. I had thought, on that long-ago afternoon, that I was just buying a pair of shoes for a stranger's child. I had no idea, in that small, simple act of compassion, that I was actually laying the foundation for my own, and our own, beautiful new home. An absolutely beautiful and heartwarming story about how two struggling families can come together to build something strong. What a powerful testament to community and kindness. Let us know what you think of this incredible story in the comments below. If you were moved by this story of a new beginning, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more uplifting and satisfying stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.